You ever just get in the zone when you're jamming, whether it's by yourself or over a backing track, and you're just in this place where you're like, whoa, I'm actually happy with what I'm playing. This is sounding great. And then next thing you know, you've completely run out of steam and you have no idea what to play next. Well, that was my reality for many years. I would always kick myself over not having enough good ideas to just be able to continue playing and not stop and not just feel like, oh no, I've ran out of licks. So I'm gonna share with you a simple trick that helped pull me out of that reality and gave me the confidence to just keep playing guitar no matter what situation I was in. If I wanted to go full Energizer Bunny, I would just keep going and going and going and going, and I'd only stop when I felt like it, not because I had to. Let's take, for example, you're soloing an A minor pentatonic, right? And let's say, instead of using the full scale pattern, let's just use these little pentatonic hotboxes that I like to teach. So we have 3 and 5 on low E, 3 and 5 on A, 5 and 7 on D and G, and then 8 and 10 on B and high E. So if you had that framework to work with and you had to take a solo, how quickly do you think you're gonna run out of steam? Speaking for myself, it was like 4 to 8 bars tops. After that, I just did not want to hear myself play anymore. But the problem is I would approach any framework of, scale pattern, whatever I was working with like this. I would ascend and I'd do that and I'd be like having a blast. But then once I'm here, I'm like, oh man, I've used up all the notes. And that was my first mistake that really snowballed into years and years of just disappointment in myself and in my playing, was that when I would go through a scale pattern or let's say a series of hot boxes like this, I would go all the way up the scale and think, oh, I've used up all the notes, so they can't do anything for me anymore. And thinking back on that, I would just want to smack my past self across the face and be like, dude, that's not how it works. So let me show you what I figured out in order to get endless mileage out of any scale that I was using. All I had to do was start creating repeatable licks. And they could be as simple or as complicated as I wanted them to be, but they had to be repeatable, something that could just kind of go on a loop. And what that would do is it would allow me to just kind of like live in a space in a particular scale for a while and just really milk it, So let's say I had a simple lick like this, Really simple. So 10th fret on high E, little blues bend on the 8th fret, and then 10th fret on B. So if I were in the heat of battle and then I played that lick, and then I'm like, well, can't keep playing there now because I just used up all the licks. It's like, that's the wrong way to think about it, right? This is the perfectly repeatable lick, even with how simple it is. I can do something like this. And it just sounds cool. It works. It doesn't really get boring, even after playing it several times. And it just worked out, as something I could just repeat. Now what I'd have to do, like if you wanted to try this with me, what helps is to kind of bar your third finger across the B and the high E strings on the 10th fret, right when you end the lick, so you can catch that 10th fret of the high E string. And it may feel a little awkward at first, but try it out, And then you can do it in the middle octave. And then not only repeating it, but when you move it across octaves, it even gives it new life, right? So I've just taken this one lick, which just lasts like 2 seconds, and I've made it last, 10 seconds, 15 seconds. And like, you can get to the point where you're just like quadrupling my time with it. Especially if I move it across those octaves. So that right there, just by, like, imagine if let's say you had 4 or 5 core licks that happen to be very repeatable. And all of them together gave you 30 seconds of soloing time, right? And if you were to take each one and just repeat it, they don't have to all be repeated the same amount of times. Let's say one lick you repeated 5 times, one you repeated 3 times, one you repeated 10 times, imagine how that's going to exponentially increase the amount of time you can sit and solo. So something as simple as repeating licks already puts you in a position to get more out of the scale. So you never want to think that when you approach a scale one way, that you've actually used up the entire scale when you're done. That's not true at all. Because if you run out of steam on a scale, it's not the scale's fault. It's just the fact that you need new ideas. You need fresh ways to approach the scale. Let's take a look at another repeating lick. Maybe one that's a little bit harder. You know, something like like the Freebird lick, right? You know, that's super repeatable, right? So it's like 5th fret on the high E string, and then pull off from 8 to 5 on the B string, and then doing a whole step bend on the 7th fret of the G string. That's it. You know. And then it's like, once you're kind of in this loop of repeating a lick, not only are you getting more use out of the scale, but you're kind of buying time a little bit. You're giving yourself time to think, what can you play next? So you're less likely to be caught in a situation where you finish a phrase or a lick or something, and then you're like, what happens now? And then you're like, I'm just gonna stop playing. You never want to have to feel like you should stop playing just because you're out of ideas. You want to just be able to sit there and pull ideas out of a hat, right? But it doesn't take anything groundbreaking to do that. Just do something simple like repeating licks. And also check this out. You can, if you repeat a lick a certain amount of times, it'll get stale after a while. But there's little things that you can do that'll continue to make them interesting. Like, I'm talking beyond just repeating them. It's making slight variations to them. So you can take the same, let's say, series of notes and even use it as a repeating lick for a while. But if you want to get more use out of that same lick, but you don't want to repeat the exact way that you play it, you can do something slightly different. Take, for example, that first lick, I could do that, but I can also do something like this. Just a little fluttering hammer on and pull off. I can do something like that. Like, I'm talking a slight variation. So I'm still sticking with the overall, like the soul of the original lick, but making slight changes so that it doesn't feel like I'm just playing the same thing over and over again. Oh, and by the way, if you're getting value out of this lesson, please hit that like button and consider subscribing to our YouTube channel if you haven't already. Not only does it really help us out, but it lets us know that you want to see lessons just like this one, which we'd be more than happy to bring you. So thanks in advance, and let's get right back to it. Something I think is worth mentioning, I've seen some guitar players talk about the minor pentatonic scale like it's training wheels. Like once you've played enough of, blues licks or done enough boomer bends, then you can move on to a more sophisticated scale or something. And I'm like, what? The pentatonic scale should never, ever be outgrown or surpassed. It's not an inferior scale. Just because it's incredibly popular, the thing is, a scale itself is a tool, and it's really only as good as the way that it's used. So it comes down to ideas. I will never, ever get tired of the pentatonic scale. Are you kidding me? I will play it until I'm dead because it's just so fun, and I can always come up with good ideas. By using things like repeating licks and making slight variations to them, and I'll sit here and play these pentatonic hotboxes, all the stuff that you see me teach, I actually play. I don't just teach it and just dump it on you. Like, I use it out there in the wild. Okay, anyway, rant over, but I just felt like I had to say that, all right? So going back to the slight variations that you can make, let's go back to this lick. Because I feel like it's such a simple lick, right? You can do something like this. You can go, change the timing of it, right? So instead of going, you're going, you're sustaining that first note a little bit more. And you can repeat that again. So I'm sticking to the, to like the area and like the notes themselves, but I'm just making slight changes to them, and it's allowing me to just sit there and play. And I'm telling you, I can keep going, but I'm not gonna bore you with that. I just want to show you that, if I'm sitting there, playing a lick, and then I'm thinking to myself, like, what little thing can I change? When I'm saying slight variations, I mean slight, man. Like just little things, like little slides. Kind of sounds like Austin Powers. What is it? Right? So like, I'm telling you little things like that. And like, I'm not doing anything really different other than just doing that little slide thing. And it just sounds radically different than what I was playing before. And then things like hammer-ons, Or like, you can do it, you can approach the lick where you're not playing it, the notes in a linear way. You can go like, ooh, that sounded cool. Start on the 8th fret of the B string there, and then 10th fret on high E, then 10 on B, and then 8 on high E. That sounds cool. So if I'm doing something like, so I'm telling you, I could sit there all day and stay in that like high octave minor pentatonic box, just playing away. And, you know, I may not be 100% thrilled with everything I come up with, but I can tell you confidently that I could sit there and play all day looking for ways to make slight changes and keep it interesting enough to myself to want to keep on going. Now, here's the last bit of advice I'll give you. If you're going to take a solo, let's say over a backing track, really listen to what you're playing over, right? To get the vibe. If you're playing a mid-tempo blues rock shuffle or something like that, right? Just try to make your licks really fit in and feel right played over it, you know? You don't want to just play a default lick because it may not be a one-size-fits-all kind of thing. If it's something that, let's say, works better over like a hard rock track, it may not work quite as well or have hit quite as hard over like a blues rock track, right? The subtle differences in music are part of what makes it so great. So really actively listen and like listen especially to the drums. Let the beat or the rhythm section, right? The drums and bass, even on a static backing track, just listen to it and then just get in this kind of groove. And that's gonna also help you with creating the licks that you're gonna then be repeating and making slight variations to. So I invite you to try it out next time you're jamming to a backing track. Is just start simple, give yourself a handful of notes to work with, come up with a repeatable lick, and then repeat it more with those slight variations and see how much more soloing time you get. As long as you keep this simple trick of repeating licks in mind, it's gonna build some great habits for you. As you're continuing to grow as a guitar player, you start getting into more advanced styles, more advanced ways of playing, you start coming up with more complicated licks, but are also qualified to be repeatable, and you can do the same thing, like make slight variations to it, and now you're doing the same thing as far as like playing forever, but on a higher level. Oh, but get this. You know how we covered the A minor pentatonic in this lesson? Now, what if I told you that you can use it over any key, major or minor? Well, that just happens to do with that free gift that I owe you now that you made it to the end of the video. And, haha, here it is. This bad boy is a free lesson on how to instantly solo in any key. The first thing you're gonna learn is how to find any key on your fretboard in record time. And then you're gonna learn how to solo in those keys. That sound pretty cool? Well, it's 100% yours, 100% free, just for hanging out with me today. Just be sure to click here to claim your copy or check the link in the description box. If you've taken my lessons before, you've heard me say that you can convey a strong message with just a handful of notes. Now all you gotta do is take those handful of notes and just repeat them a bunch of times and make little changes to them, and then you can say whatever you want for however long you want.